Today we are going to be focusing on the soul trait of patience. Am I the only one whose patience is challenged right now? Is anybody else feeling a little stuck, a little trapped, a little bit like, come on, can I just get on with it? Well, many of us are in this situation. And as I wrote in my blog this week, I actually was thinking about other soul traits to cover today, and I just realized that I was running away from patience. It's not one of my favorites, but it really feels like it is the right way to go here. Okay, so as is our custom, I always like us to start with a meditation for us to become present. And today we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to do a little bit of a before and after. So maybe in the chat, just give us a couple of words. Sort of how are you feeling coming into this gathering today? So if you're new to Zoom, there's a button on the bottom that's called chat. Okay, yeah, so someone's saying they felt nervous all day long. I can relate to that. Tense, tired. I feel a little bit of nervousness, maybe a slight amount of performance anxiety here as we get going. Well, it is a great time to meditate. So let us all get comfortable in our chairs and close your eyes and relax and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your mind, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. And Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. And Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you are ready, you may open your eyes. Well, then maybe let's go back into Zoom. Does anyone feel any different? I know I feel a little more grounded, a little more settled, a little more open and present, but you may or may not feel that way. Where are you now? Less tension, wonderful. All right, so in general, people are feeling a little less tense. Sleepy or still sleepy. I'm going to share my slides. Can you see these okay? So give me I see some nods, some thumbs up, excellent. Okay, so as you may recall, if you've been here before, we always start with talking about one of the four Mussar assumptions. And these are for people who are new to the practice, who may not have a lot of Jewish knowledge or education, but it allows us all to start at a similar place. And even those of us who've been doing Mussar a little bit longer, they often give us something to think about. So the one that I want to start with today is this idea that we all have the same soul traits, but we have a unique amount of each. So you might feel like you're the least patient person in the world, or you have no patience whatsoever. But what Mussar would say is that you have patience, but it's just out of balance. Where someone might seem to be miserly, but they're not completely lacking in the soul trait of generosity. They simply are out of balance. So what do you think of this idea, and what does it bring up for you? Why is this an important thing for us to remember? You can unmute yourself and just share.
I like the idea because it means that we're not missing anything, but we just need to adjust the volume or the bass and treble knobs, but we're not lacking as human beings.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. Other thoughts?
For me, patience is a matter of practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's something like a muscle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so by practicing, by building that muscle, we can sort of, as to use Leslie's analogy, we can adjust the knob a little bit. Absolutely. Any other thoughts?
I like the fact that this stresses our commonality as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I myself sometimes get a little judgmental. I'm probably the only one here who ever judges other people, but this is something that's helpful for me to remember, that that it is a commonality. And I don't really know the other person's story. I don't, all I'm seeing is just what's in front of me, at that moment. But there's probably a lot more to the story, and they certainly have as much potential to change as I do. Yeah. I thought did I hear someone else? It sounded like it, but.
It was me, Oriela.
Oh, hi.
Yeah? Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Yep, I can.
Oh, great. Hi, thank you. Hi, Frederick. It certainly fits with the way that I conduct my life in the way, I conduct my life on the premise that all of us are good, that we're born good, and that the reason that we don't always act like that is because we've gathered lots of hurts. And somehow when we, when I do stuff with listening, which I do in my work, that you always see the goodness underneath that, you know, but the hurts and the stresses that are accumulate, and we've never been able to really heal from them fully, because if we start having a rage or tears or something, people have problems with that.
Sure.
And so we never really, I don't know. So I've noticed that when people heal from that, then they get back to the goodness, and it's quite clear how good someone is when they do that. So this definitely fits in with that, with the way that I view it in my life. Thank you for letting me share.
Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. And I would add that within this framework, those hurts, you know, again, push us out of balance across one of these traits, or multiple traits. And one way to address healing can be, again, through this sort of practice. We're taking that on and looking within and saying, what's really going on here?
Hi, it's Wendy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Wendy.
Oh, hi. I wasn't sure how to raise my hand. I love this. I love the fact that we all share the same soul traits. We all have them. To me, it feels like it gives us a responsibility rather than an excuse. I'm thinking of the generosity now, and I'm thinking, if we approach the trait and say, oh, you know, I'm just not a generous person. Well, guess what? If we're told, yes, actually, there's generosity in there, that kind of gives us the responsibility to seek that out and really develop it. And I also think then on the other side of that, because you just don't feel like you're a generous person, you just can't possibly work on that. That fact that we share the same soul traits also gives us the hope and the encouragement to actually go ahead and work on it, this is the beauty in Mussar, I think.
Oh, that was very well said. Thank you. Yeah, I love the emphasis you put on that. Yeah, it gives us, you know, some responsibility that we, you know, don't really have an excuse. But, you know, it's also realistically, some of these things are really a big struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But the first step in that struggle is having some hope to realize that, you know, this is possible. And if we just throw up our hands and say, oh, I'm not generous, I'm not patient, I can't do anything about it, then, you know, certainly there's no opportunity for change or transformation if we're not willing to make the effort. So thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on here. What I have on the screen is a reading from Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, who's one of the great Mussar masters of the 20th century. Is the top of this blocked, or can you see it? I would love for a volunteer to begin to read this out loud. Maybe someone who we haven't heard from yet, and just jump in.
I'm Jim. What is patience? A patient person is actually like one who lifts a heavy load. And even though it is heavy for him, he continues to walk in his way, and he does not refuse to bear it. Pause.
Okay, so let me pause you. Let me pause you there, either for Jim, you or from someone else. What is he teaching here? What is this? You know, when I first started learning about patience within the Mussar context, this is not what I would have thought about. For me, I would have thought about patience as being calm or something like that. But here it's like bearing a heavy load. What is he talking about?
For me, the load related to patience can be a sense of urgency, anxiety, a desire to do something, act. And it's not easy. It requires some discipline, but first the intention must be there, the intention to be patient and not act.
Yes, I'm hearing there's a couple of things. The first thing is you describe those sensations. What are those sensations like?
Well, he talks about that heavy burden, and I see it as responsibility, that in order to wrestle with something that maybe doesn't come natural in our, large area of soul traits, and for me this one is one of those, it is a burden and a responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a burden, it's a responsibility. Love it.
For me, the idea of patience is rooted in the Hebrew word savlanut, and the root of the Hebrew word savlanut is sevel, which is suffering. So actually within the word savlanut, within the word patient, we have the root suffering. So it contains it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when Jim was talking about, you know, feeling this anxious and all these things, these are unpleasant sensations. You know, oh my God, I have to do something, and you know, and that can be very unpleasant. So there is, you know, within this, you know, and carrying something really heavy, you know, having memories going back to trying to lift this old, I don't know if any of you ever had one of those old like sleeper sofas that was like incredibly, you know, unbelievably heavy, and me and my other college friends are trying to like get this up 3 flights of stairs. I mean, it was, you know, it was unpleasant. It was a lot of work. Okay, so Jim, please continue the reading.
Thank you. This is how it is in all relationships among people. Sometimes the friend has actually injured us. Oops, I blocked the screen. A friend has actually injured us with an all-encompassing sting, with an unreasonable demand, with an unjustified claim, and with all that we are patient, just like one who bears a heavy load. Outbursts of anger or forceful rejection is like throwing off the load. Pause.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we have a relationality aspect, which is come into this. So what is the relationality aspect?
Well, it says that nobody's perfect. And being in a relationship means carrying that load, if you will, of that person's imperfection. And that's just the way it is. And basically it's just to live with the suffering of life and the suffering of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. So part of living with other people is remembering they have imperfections, and stuff is going to happen and come up. Wonderful. Thank you, Jack. What else? What do you make of it where he talks about sometimes the friend has actually injured us? Does that mean we have the right to just kind of, you know, go off on them? Does that, you know, how does patience come into play in that circumstance?
This is Leslie. I think along patience, when we look at patience in a relationship, we also need to look at love, because I think we can be more patient with people the more we love them. And sometimes there may be times when we don't need to be patient, not that we need to have an outburst, but maybe it's best to walk away. I mean, those of us who are parents have all had our toddlers again, and we love our children so much, we do it again, and without getting upset. But I think there's a mix of patience and love, and the combination changes how patient we are.
This is Carol. And to me, if you're patient with a friend, you might get angry, but you have the patience to step back, breathe, maybe assess the situation a little bit, and then approach your friend with a quiet rather than a fury. You can still be angry. You can still say, you really messed up this time, my friend. What you did or better yet, not you messed up, but what you did really hurt me. And here's why. But you have to be patient enough to take a breath, maybe walk away for a little bit, and then come back so that you are not in retaliation hurting your friend and therefore putting giant tears in a relationship that was just slightly ripped a minute ago, or one thread was pulled a minute ago.
I also think Jack ended his comment before talking about the word pause, and to me, Rabbi Wolbe is saying we pause, right? Similar to what Carol was talking about. Instead of reacting, we pause. And in that pause, we are being patient and we are holding the load of whatever they have put forth.
Yeah, thank you. And there have, I think it was in the Mussar book Peleiotes, where he talked about like how heroic it is being able to have self-restraint and to do kind of what Carol's talking about. I mean, that's not easy to do. I mean, especially when we're angry, and that's why someone before talked about developing kind of the muscle of patience and the habit of patience, because I know for one, I really can get very reactive and I can get very nasty in certain situations. And it has, like, you can often tell that someone is really embraced Mussar when you run into their spouse and they're like, wow, I don't know what you did to my spouse, but boy, they're so much more patient and they're behaving so differently, or, this really has a very important impact on our relationships and who we are. But there's nothing, I think it's interesting that there's nothing about here that says that we need to remain calm. Does anyone find that surprising? And maybe a little countercultural with the way you might hear about patience in other circumstances? Amy, if you're trying to talk, you're still on mute.
Okay, how do I unmute? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. What I'm focusing on is the term heavy load. Heavy load does not have to be something bad. We're kind of assuming that a heavy load could be if you're leaving home because you have to and you're taking all of your possessions with you. That's a heavy load, but it's not a bad thing. And so the one who lifts a heavy load, even though it's heavy for him, or like carrying your brother or your child on your back, you continue to walk in your way and you don't refuse to bear it. I mean, I think it is about responsibility, but I don't think it's necessarily about being calm. I think, we think of patient people as gentle people who just let everything kind of flow through them and they don't get upset about stuff. But I think it's somebody who's willing to carry the heavy load, whether it's good or bad, and not complain and just do it because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Amy. Let's peel this back another layer. So I think we've already talked about this. We already had, I can't remember who it was who mentioned Saval.
Greg, can I say
were you about to share something?
Me?
Andrea?
And Ken.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Ken.
I was just going to say, I feel like the difference between being patient and being calm is, when you're talking about doing the work, carrying the burden, it's being patient is about taking the responsibility to manage your own emotions and not make them everyone else's problem.
Thank you. Yeah, I love this emphasis on responsibility. It's not something that I thought about within the context of patience before, but I love kind of learning with all of you today. And Ken, you were going to add something too.
Yeah, hello, Greg, and hello, everyone. Thank you. And just giving this some thought, I've still been thinking a lot about last week when we were talking about humility. And during the week, I was looking about how much of that applies to what we are going through right now. You know, when you know, there's one far extreme to the left and one far extreme to the right. And the same is true in this case too, with patients. And everybody's contributed and brought things in. Like love can be on one end of the spectrum, and the other can be what I call almost like a pressure cooker. You know, where it is the, you know, the burden, it is the stress, it is the anxiety. And when you talk about responsibility, it's how we respond to these things. And both of these, humility and then with patience, has a lot to do like where people are. I do believe that people are born out of love, and love is all there is, but everything else outside of love is man-made. And people are conditioned in certain ways and respond in separate ways. You can love somebody greatly, and yet if you're under great pressure, anxiety, overburdened, and things like that, it's, you know, how do you react? How do you respond? And in these times right now, you see a lot more and more and more of that, where you do have the when you're talking about patience, there's the other extreme perhaps, where there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and it shows in how people responsibly react or irresponsibly react.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, talking about where we are, I mean, we are all have a much bigger load than we normally have. You know, wherever you are in the world, if you are at all plugged in, and people in hotspots, or you know, may have relatives, or may have other people impacted, or you know, who isn't impacted. And you know, if you're at home, you can't work. If you're at work, you're potentially exposed. I mean, there's, you know, we all have that extra burden, and it can make it a little harder to, you know, access that love, as Ken talked about, which is why this is such an important tool for us to use.
And that's the pressure cooker. That's the stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Greg, can I say something? Or
absolutely.
I've spoken before, so unless there's someone else who wants to talk first. Oh, okay. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just think, and I had an experience this week where I got very upset. And a family member who's far away in Israel, and she was very upset and talked to me, and then I thought she hit out at me and stuff like that. But I think what I wanted to say, that's not about that, but when I am in my own fear, or when I'm very angry, I know that my thinking is not clear. So if I'm feeling that, it's very important to remember that I need to be quiet. And actually that happened, and I was left with very hard feelings. And for 2 days, I kind of worked on them, not with her. I didn't communicate. But then at the end of 2 days, I talked to someone, and I got a different perspective, that I was the one that caused her more aggravation. She was trying to unload something, and I caused. And then I was able, my next communication, to say, I apologize. I'm so sorry that I caused you extra aggravation. And that opened up a whole, you know, wonderful conversation. And a few times it was said, and I said, I'm so sorry that, she said, it didn't seem like you're concerned about me. So then I wrote, you know, doesn't mean anything that I didn't sleep all night, you know, in a joking way. But it's just like my whole perspective was changed. Here I was thinking that she's the problem, and then I realized that it was me. So it's very important for me to give myself that time to go through the feelings, get rid of all those feelings, so I can get my thinking back. Thank you for letting me share.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. And I, you know, it's reminding me how important it is for us to own our feelings right now. You know, this is a time when there's going to be a lot of fear and anxiousness and anger and frustration. And, we can't, we don't want to try to bypass that. We don't want to get carried away or owned by them. But at the same time, we need to be willing to face those. And as one who's, I've had this really interesting experience for the last few weeks. I've been coping okay during the week, but man, as soon as Shabbat comes and I turn off my computer and I don't do any social media, I get all these feelings start emerging. And I think that I've been sort of busying myself up to sort of avoid processing what's going on. And again, being able to bring patience that okay, this is something I need to experience right now. And that's a good segue to the next slide, because as those of you who are familiar with Mussar know, one way that we can focus and practice on these soul traits is to have a mantra. And the one that I like, one of the ones that I like for patience is, "This too shall pass, and I have the strength to get by until it does." So what is that as a mantra? What do you take away from that, and how is that helpful or not helpful for what you might be experiencing right now?
Hi, Greg. This is Lori.
Hey, Lori.
Hi. First of all, I have so much gratitude for your holding these sessions, especially in these times. And so thank you very much. For me, the intersection of patience and calm is acceptance, and which connects very closely to me with peace. And I had to really work on what acceptance meant before that could make sense to me. And I guess it's more of a Buddhist concept. Maybe I don't want to misquote, but that really we get really upset when our expectations and hopes of how something will turn out differ from what really is happening. And that's where the suffering happens, right? And so for me, acceptance doesn't mean, oh, well, it is what it is, and I have to be okay with it. For me, acceptance means feeling every feeling. This is really what is going on. This is really how I am feeling. I accept this is what's happening. And for me, when you come from a place of acceptance and peace with it, take as much action as you possibly feel is appropriate, and let go what you feel you don't control. So for me, there's peace in that. And when there's that peace, then it's so easy to be patient. Right? Because it just is what it is. Somebody's being how they're being. They have their story. It is what it is. I'm feeling my feelings, but it's ultimately okay. And I have on my ring, on my thumb right now, Kol ze yavo, right? This too shall pass. And so when I forget this, I can twirl this ring on my finger and it says, this too shall pass. This is only just what it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, there's so much wonderful, wonderful things that you shared there, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you.
So follow up to Lori. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Solange. So I think that I've been thinking about the spectrum of patience, and somewhat differently than it's outlaid here, in terms of the fact that I think there's both a need to be patient and a need to be impatient. And so some of it has to do with what is it that you may have some control over and what is it that you may not. So I do not have control of COVID-19. I may not have control about official policy either, but it's somewhere where I can impact. And so I do feel impatient about certain things. I can be calmly impatient about them. And without being reactive, I can choose to act in a way to say, okay, this too shall pass, but in order for it to pass with as little damage as possible, this is what I think and I would like to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring into this, because as it says on the spectrum, if we have too much patience, then we can become inactive. And I know in my past life I stayed in the job about 2 years longer than I should have, because I thought, if I just kind of bear with it and muscle through it, it's going to get better. And it was a toxic work environment. There was nothing that was going to get better there. one asshole would leave and another asshole would get hired. I mean, that's just kind of the way it was there. So, I was the one that needed to take action. So that's a really important part of this. It's not about just being patient and just bearing it, but as Laurie said, realizing that things can pass can help us understand that this heavy load that we're carrying right now, it is temporary.
And Greg, just a very quick follow-up, because I might not have been that clear, that I don't think that patience means inaction. I think patience starts with accepting what is so you can be in your feet and figure out what action to take.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. When we're looking at soul traits, we might, be looking at one slice of the pie, and the other one I was thinking about was enthusiasm or alacrity. The Hebrew is zerazut, which is all about when we take action. So I think of those two as complementary. But like for those of us who, from like the higher level, in Mussar, we're trying to figure out how do we act as a mensch, or how do we show up in our best way. And so there are multiple things that funnel in. And absolutely, I hear what you're saying. It's not simply about, it's a do I act or do I don't act kind of.
Could I say something?
Sure.
Jenny?
Hey, Jenny.
Hi. I wanted to say that that's what I have trouble with, my response, especially to maybe a hurt from someone. And so I don't respond because I don't have the right words at the time. And I'm definitely not calm inside. So that's what I have trouble with, just on the spot having the right words, or is it better, or not necessarily better, but another option is to attend to it later when you can figure out the words that you want to use. I just know that I am calm in other situations that aren't that kind, not a personal insult or whatever. I can be calm if I'm waiting in a line with 50 people, or if somebody, jumps in front of me. I can be calm about that. Or if in traffic, I never get upset about crazy drivers, but it's the personal insult or attack that I'm not calm. My response isn't one of being calm.
Yeah, well, you're bringing up a really important point, which, we all have the things that are going to push our buttons, and they're all going to be different. So you are calm in traffic. So that's not a situation where you need patience, because if you're already calm, then patience isn't something that you need. But it's in that situation where for you, it's if you feeling hurt or insulted, and you either are like, just so stunned you don't know what to say, or if you did say something, it probably wouldn't be productive. And that is a situation where you could think about maybe where I need patience, and this kind of hurt is something that I'm going to hang on to for a little while until I think about the best way for me to respond. And it doesn't mean never responding, but you could certainly, if it was right for you, to apply patience to say, okay, I'm gonna think about what I want to say and think about what's going on with me. Kind of like, yeah, Carol?
That was kind of where I was coming from before, in that you take a step back. So you do have the right words and you do have the right action. Because if you just fly off the handle, that's probably not going to end terribly well. So the patience comes in saying, not in not acting, but in waiting until you are equipped to take a good path in your actions that's going to be constructive and not going to blow everything up or hurt you even more than you're already hurt. So yeah, that's kind of what I think.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm going to move a song, so I want to make sure we have plenty of time. Last week, I thought that when we got into the pairs, we were a little bit rushed, so I'm going to make sure we have enough time for that. And it's coming to be a point that we just saw, being in the presence, being in the present. Would someone have a volunteer to read what Rabbi Zelig Pliskin had to say?
I'll read. The essence of patience is to live in the present. We are impatient because we want to be in the future faster than reality will take us there. Since we will generally be in the exact same place, whether we will experience patience or impatience, it makes sense to choose to be patient.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to split you up into separate rooms. So you're going to see something come up on your screen that says join room. And when that comes up, click yes, and you'll be paired with another person. And I'd like you to talk about kind of where you are today, dealing with the current, with the virus and the current situation, and how this idea about being in the present or wanting to be in the future kind of applies to where you are. So I'm going to stop the share. And let's see now. Breakout rooms. Okay. So here we go. So you should be seeing something on your screen. Okay, so just click join. I see some of you are joining and you're disappearing. That is good. Lenny, do you want to join your room? Grace, you want to join your room? And Jenny, do you see the button to join your breakout room?
Oh, no. Oh, I see it down below.
Yep.
Okay, so just click on that.
Yep.
So does this mean everybody's going to be in breakout room 3? Or is this
Nope, just you and one other person.
Oh, okay.
Lori, head back to your room. Your partner is just clicking in. Okay. Grace, you still there? Look like you might be frozen. All right, let me see. I'm gonna move Lenny to a different room then. Okay, those of you who are on Facebook, I'm gonna have a teaching for you, so just be patient for a second, please. Wait, Grace just disappeared. To room 8. So Lenny, I'm going to move you to room 8. Okay. I think everybody is kind of where they can be. Hey Grace, what's up?
I lose the connection. I'm here.
Oh,
Sorry.
you're here. Okay. I'm going to assign you to a room. You will be part of a 3, I think. So hang on just a second. Okay.
Thank you.
So if you click join. Okay, so for those of you who are watching on the live, I have a teaching I want to share with you. I don't have any slides, but it's a story in the Talmud about someone named Rav Preda. And he had a student that he would teach on a regular basis. And the student was really not a good student. And he was probably learning disabled, and Rav Preda had to repeat every lesson 400 times. So he would go through the lesson 400 times in a row, and finally the student would learn it. And you can imagine, immediately see the value of patience here, because this is, repetitive, tedious. One day, someone came in during the lesson, and Rav Preda got up and talked to him. And it turns out another member of the community was sick, and Rav Preda said, okay, I'll go and be there with them when this is over. And when he got to the end of the lesson, the student started crying, and he said, what's the matter? And he said, I'm sorry, I didn't learn it today. So, well, why not? Well, I was afraid you were going to get up, and I was so worried about you leaving that I wasn't able to pay attention. So Rav Preda went ahead and repeated the lesson another 400 times so that this student could learn. And as a reward, he was given he was given a righteous life, and his entire generation got to be in the world to come. But I want us to think about that, where how can we bring that kind of Rav Preda energy to where we are today? I know for me, I am sitting at home. I have 2 teenage kids. One's home from college. One is home from high school. They're, troopers, but this is a big challenge for them. My wife is working from home. We're all together in a small house. And there are times where I just feel really kind of fed up. There's not a space where I can just go off by myself generally. We kind of rotate for a little office in the laundry room here. And so I find it useful to kind of think about this, this person who really just put everything that he had into focusing on what was in front of him right there. It's everything that we're talking about. It's staying present. He wasn't looking ahead and thinking about his next meeting. It was the student who got upset and distracted and thinking he was going to leave, but he was, in the moment, focused on what he was doing. He wasn't, as Rabbi Pliskin said, sort of worried about what was going to happen later and down the road. And so I'm trying to think about, how can I just be focused on what's going on right now? And if I start to get, what my friend Helene would call the itchy witchies, or just kind of feeling unsettled and a little bit off, think about, what is it that I can bring to kind of bring that sort of focus. Now, I don't have access to kind of the YouTube, if you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook, I don't have access to those right now. I can't manage multiple screens at the same time. But if you do have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat box. I guess I could sort of open it up and take a look and see if anybody is there, since we have people are all kind of happily off in their rooms. I've never looked at myself, on Jewish Live, but whoa, here I am. Yeah, so this is really weird seeing myself talk on Facebook. But if anybody's watching and has a Facebook question they want to add, or a comment they want to jump in, this is your moment. But okay, that's fine. I'm going to head back to the main meeting. I've given people a good chunk of time, so I think I'm going to give them the notice that it's time to come back. They're all going to get the 1-minute notice that things are going to close, and they are all going to start coming back in. And because they're not coming in right away, that's telling me that we're having a really good and interesting conversation that's going on in the breakout rooms, which I think is wonderful. That's why I call this a community gathering. It's a time for us to kind of be with other people and to talk and listen in a safe environment that's non-judgmental. If you have anything you'd like to share, you can message me on the American Mussar page or on my Greg Marcus Facebook page if we are connected, because I will certainly be happy to be there. Wow, nobody has come back with 7 seconds to go. So that tells me again that people are really getting a lot out of these. And they're coming back. We're going to head back to the gallery view. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. Not a single person left their room early, which makes me feel kind of guilty that I was sort of cutting you off. But I'd love to kind of hear a little bit of a readout. What was the conversation like? What were some of the things that you covered without divulging what someone might have shared with you? Yeah, Lori. Oh, you got to unmute yourself. Okay, I've unmuted you.
Okay. Just, how we're feeling, and then just basically what we're doing, like how we spend our days, like to kind of just stay in the moment, and just like what we're doing, like what our daily routine is and that kind of stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I had a delightful time in our room talking, and felt a connection and a sharing. And the two of us could honestly express some delight of the opportunity that this crisis is bringing us in a lot of different ways, not being indifferent, of course, to the suffering. Hadassah, thank you.
Beautiful.
Well, good. Well, I forgot to say this ahead of time, but please feel free to reach out and connect on Facebook or trade email addresses or phone numbers. If any of you want to continue the conversation, you can use the chat function and send a private message to the person that you were meeting with so that you can continue to connect. Other thoughts, or anyone else like to share something that you found meaningful? Ken.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Greg. My partner was Jack, who's, I didn't realize, Jack's in New York, and we talked about he's fascinating, and he was talking about there's the fear of living in the future, thinking about the unknown as to where we're going, and that takes him out of the present. And by golly, when I talked to him, I mentioned that, well, I'm right now in the present with you. And he just stopped his track and looked at me and smiled, and he says, well, thank you. And then I wanted to just listen, and he was coming out with things. He has just written a book. He talked about boredom, because I had mentioned that I don't see how people can be bored. People say, I see it all the time where people say that they're bored, but I think that there's so much to be creative that we can do. I asked, do you have hobbies? And his face lit up. He just wrote a book on poetry. And I said, that's something, his tour now is off, but I said, virtually right now, there's so many people who would love potentially to hear you, to see you, and the poetry can mean so much to everybody. And instead of being just, neighborhood by neighborhood, with a visit at a time, you could be in different cities, different states, different countries now with the power of the internet with this book. And it was a wonderful conversation.
I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to share, but I'm so glad you had such a open-hearted conversation, and what a wonderful champion you've become for Jack's book of poetry. That's wonderful. Thank you.
The other thing he mentioned though too, Greg, was nature. He mentioned he was in line and everything's blooming, and he was really in the moment with that nature, and it was really touching.
Nature is very healing. The planet has gotten a little Shabbaton, a little extra rest, and not that I would have wished for that, but it is something which can be a blessing in this time.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Counselor, a rabbi, and a babysitter walk into the room. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so anyway, I just thought the three of us, we each take care of people in some way or another, and we all discussed how we managed to get back, and we all seem to be fairly patient. I felt patience in the room, and we all seem to take different pathways to get back to the place of patience during our daily living with this COVID virus. And that's pretty much where I thought we were.
Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was serendipitously in the same room with someone else, and it turns out we're both children of survivors. And so we shared, for us, the pull towards the past that this particular experience is bringing up for us. And there was something in some ways very comforting about talking to someone who had a similar past experience in terms of how it is impacting upon our present.
Well, you know, I'm just such a huge believer in doing this randomly, and the right people tend to find each other in these circumstances, you know, and you may read into that about whatever you like about the universe or the divine, or just the potential of any two human beings to connect, that they can find a way to do it in a very short period of time. So I'm glad that you were able to find someone who really could understand a very unique type of situation that other people might not be able to relate to in such a personal way. I'm going to close with putting up just a couple of one of the, can you see the screen here? One of the things that we can do as we focus on patients for the next week is try to pick like one action or one particular thing that we're going to focus on. I know for me, I think it's going to be really trying to stay present, which was the second one on this list. That was a real, you know, as I thought about it, and I did sort of share a teaching when you guys were all away. If you want to go back and look at the video, you can see that. But just really staying present and not letting my head sort of move ahead to what comes next or what might happen or what happened in the past. Reminding yourself it's okay to be patient because this situation will pass. And we can also say, you know, okay, thanks for this opportunity to practice patience. You know, if it's a struggle, you know, life gives us the challenges we need to grow. Another thing that can be really powerful is meditating on the image of a patient person. I know my grandfather was an incredibly patient person. He graduated high school in 1932, right at the start of the Great Depression. He couldn't go to college. He didn't work for a couple of years. But that really taught him how to be patient and appreciative. So then there's a couple of other things on the list as well. So we're going to close as we began with a meditation. So I invite you once again to close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. Then have a nice, long, leisurely exhale. And tilt your head back and smile. And just appreciate everyone who's chosen to come and be together for this hour. The opportunity for authentic sharing and authentic listening. Now think about the important people in your life, whether they're under the same roof with you right now or somewhere else. And just feel that connection to them. Thank you all so much for being here today. We will be back again next Thursday at the same time. You are invited to come to the American Mussar website if you'd like to get on my email list. I send out an email newsletter every Tuesdays, which kind of previews what we'll be talking about on Thursday. And I also want to encourage you to be generous during this time, to find an organization to go give to. That regular practice of generosity can help us also feel engaged during this time. So have a wonderful week, and don't hesitate to be in touch if for any reason. Thank you.